think it's a time for us not to, certainly not to close our eyes to the challenges ahead of us, but to also see the unique opportunities and the hope that we can provide and continue to provide as church, even as we are faced with these obstacles and challenges. The part of the renewal was, again, that we were to form families so that we would be able to, our parishes into family structures so that we would be able to pull our resources together, pull our resources, our financial resources, our pastoral resources, our charitable resources, and most importantly also our personnel, our diminishing number of priests who continue to spread themselves quite thin. So when I first arrived, I put a little bit of a hold on the renewal because I wanted to make sure that those who would be entrusted with carrying the renewal forward would be able to do that. And those were our clergy and the leadership of our parishes. Also, did we have the leadership, we were calling our laity to greater involvement in the decision-making and in the work of this renewal, and were they properly being trained and formed for this important work? So the families were formed and came together in 2022, and we moved from basically 160 parishes throughout this region of Western New York into 36 families. Some families have 3 parishes within them, some have 6, and each of them would be headed up by a priest, and then we would determine how many priests would be needed to meet the needs of these specific families. That is a continual, I think, process and project. I've been involved with priest personnel for many years, and I can tell you it never ends. It's something that constantly needs to be looked at. The reality today continues to change. As we know, we continue to be working our way through our Chapter 11 reorganization, and we need to take a harder look at how we are restructuring and right-sizing the diocese here in Buffalo in light of a dwindling population, changing demographics, and fewer resources. Our Catholic footprint is no longer what it used to resemble. We are not the church we were 40 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, let alone 5 years ago. We are an entity. I think that's the nature of church anyway. Every generation has its challenges and its unique opportunities to continue to evangelize. As I said, there is great hope, and I think that's why we have invited, I know Father Noonan, Mark Noonan here. He is working directly as a pastor, so you get it right from the horse's mouth, you might say, in the work of the road to renewal. But our family of parishes are doing great work. We just met with our priests, and we have a lot of work to do, though, so that we continue to show our good faith in restructuring the diocese and getting it to a size that we're able to meet the needs of our people and to also meet the needs of the personnel that we have. These are opportunities for us to be maybe smaller in our facilities, but stronger in our faith and our outreach to teach, to sanctify, and to govern. That, as a bishop, those are my 3 characteristics. As a bishop, I'm called to teach the faith, to spread the gospel. That's my number one thing I worry about when I get up in the morning. Are we able to do that in a proper way? We do that certainly through our parishes and through my chair. There is also to sanctify. Are we able to provide the sacraments to all of those who need it throughout our region, and also to govern effectively in a way that we're accountable, we're transparent, again, and that we are using the gifts of the people that they have entrusted to our care in a proper way. The Renewal has been involved in some wonderful work, and we're seeing some fruits. A number of weeks ago, we had a gathering of all of our Renewal leaders throughout the diocese. We held that at Hilbert College, and I think everyone came away from there with a renewed sense that we need to break out of this maintenance model that we have, that we're spending all of our resources maintaining facilities and buildings, and our need to be missionary, to evangelize, to go out, and again, to share the good news, and to be joyful about our faith, which I know our people want. We had a youth rally recently at Villa Maria College, 250 young people who were hungering to be a part of their church and to deepen their faith and their relationship with the Lord. It was a gathering, very spirit-filled, and I think it gives us, I think, that sense of hope in the future of our diocese here in Buffalo. So we are focused, our efforts are focused on the mission and not only maintenance. We need to respond to some of the numbers and the trends that we have taken a hard dive into, that I know Father Brian will share with us in a few minutes, and to show that also our desire to right size this diocese so that we can, in collaboration, emerge from chapter 11 and again move forward with hope into a future where the church is still plays an important role in the people of our lives and the people of this diocese. God bless you, and thank you again for being here today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Father Brian Zaleski, the Vicar for Renewal Development, and so you have the slide deck available to you, and it will come electronically, but I'm going to go through a couple of things just so that you try to explain what's before you. So as we look to today's announcement, we're really going to focus on the need to right-size and reshape. When the renewal process began a number of years ago, starting in 2019 with the task force moving forward, I want to acknowledge one of the first things that was mentioned is that the renewal was not about closing parishes. I hear that over and over again. We have to acknowledge that circumstances have changed. We said that the way we did when we started the process, because we have to be realistic about our changing climate, culture, changing demographics, changing populations. And so this process that we're embarking upon right now is going to address some of those situations. So some of the things that are taken into consideration as we're moving forward is, the diocese faces multiple critical challenges. I think we're aware of all of those. The financial strain due to Chapter 11, significant priest shortage, excess property maintenance. We spend much of our time focusing on buildings and properties instead of on mission. Declining mass attendance. Our average parish congregation, over 60% is over the age of 66 years of age, and only 9 to 12% are younger members in our congregations today, based on who's attending. The brass tacks of what we're here today about is to see the diocese where we are currently structured is 160 total parishes as of today, with 196 worship sites. As we're looking to these recommendations, looking at demographics, financial data, sacramental data, geography, looking at historical properties, architecture, taking into consideration where a parish is needed and how do we make sure that we can fulfill the bishop's mission of governing, sanctifying, teaching in all areas of Western New York, it's predicted that we would move to a projected total number of parishes of 106, with projected 1. What's the difference between a parish and a worship site? A parish is an entity, it's a canonical entity. A worship site are the number of specific buildings where mass is essentially held, where services are held. And so sometimes that is one parish, one building. Sometimes it's one parish is two buildings. And so that's just the difference between those two numbers there. So as you're looking for the Diocese of Buffalo, that's a 34% reduction in parishes and a 38% reduction in worship sites. And as we look to our Western New York region, the Catholic Church is not the only one reorganizing, restructuring, and looking at taking a hard look at how we minister going forward. So this fits the culture and time of our day, and it helps us to be better stewards and responsible for what we need going forward. Just to share with you some of the things that were analyzed. So what's happening is the Road to Renewal is making recommendations to parish families on recommended mergers and closures. These are not final decisions, but it takes the data that I'm showing you here in parish demographics, financial contributions, sacramental participation, and various regional considerations in our urban environment, suburban, and rural, and really taking those into consideration and what's needed in those climates to move forward. So we're looking at all factors to determine what recommendations we're going to make to families of parishes, and then we're looking for them to take that information, consult with their leadership, and then either approve the recommendation or make suggested recommendations. This is a consultative process. It's a synodal process in the way the church functions moving forward. And so we want to make sure that we highlight that. We're giving guidance, recommendations, looking for leadership input and creativity to respond back to us. And of course, we might not know all of the circumstances and factors that every parish community has before them, or every family of parishes. And so we want to give them the opportunity to give us suggestions. And so there will be a process for that to happen. So as we're looking at some, I'm not going to go through all the details. You can read the slides, obviously. But when we look out across our diocese, there's a 49% decline in registered households. You know, in parish demographics, we look at registered households versus contributing. And there's a movement in the diocese across the United States to look more towards contributing households because they're directly participating in the mission of the church in some way. And so they give us a more accurate number of people that are participating in parish households. Can be people that just show up and then might not be participating in future endeavors and things that are taking place in parish life. So we can see those numbers have changed. 49% decline in registered, 39% in an increase, 12% stayed the same. While those are registered, when we look at contributing, 53% reported decline in contributing, which indicates decreased engagement. Again, there's a slide that describes the difference between a registered household and a contributing household. So for example, as we're looking to the future, Parish A might have registered households of over 5,600 people, households, but their contributing households are only 868. That would tell us that's a poor engagement level in our parish communities. And there could be a number of reasons for that. It could be people are registering in a parish just to receive a sacrament and then moving, not really participating in parish life until the next sacrament is needed. It could be poor record keeping. There's a lot of factors that could be taking place to explain that discrepancy. When we look at parishes, this is what we would determine as a high engagement rate of a parish that has essentially just 1,100 registered families versus a little over 1,100 contributing families, a 98% engagement rate. This tells us things are moving in a good direction as far as parishioners being involved. This is an example of one of the parishes in our diocese. And so what we essentially did in your packet is we looked at the geographic areas and what are those contributing versus registered percentages. Gives us an idea of participation rates in different areas, geographical areas of our diocese. And so those are provided for you. When we look at financially, we can see that 39% of parishes have less than 50% of registered households contributing. That's an alarming trend. 33% of parishes show a declining contribution level. 59% of parishes reported negative operating balance trend. That means we're focusing so much on our buildings and facilities, we are able to meet the expenses, the basic needs of parish life through what's being collected in contributions. When we look at sacraments, we can see that there are concerns. 52% of parishes celebrate an average of less than one baptism a month in our diocese. And then 59% of parishes currently experience a steady decline in baptisms. That's an alarming trend that we need to acknowledge and respond to. So some very paraphrasing here, some snapshots of our vicariate. A vicariate is a region in our diocese We have 7 geographical vicariates in our diocese, so it focuses on specific areas where parishes relate to one another. So in our Buffalo Vicariate, which is all the city parishes of Buffalo, we have a 68.8% of registered households are declining, 65.6% of contributing households are declining, 75% of parishes have declining contributions, 47% report a negative operating balance. In our suburban vicariates, Southern Erie, Northern Erie, we see that there's a report of high declines in contributing households, roughly 72% in both, and both have a significant number of parishes with less than 1 baptism a month. So 76% of our parishes in our suburbs have less than 1 baptism a month, which is alarming for us. When we look at our rural communities, you see that there's a 0% in these parishes reported decline in registered households or contributing households, which is telling us in factors and ways that rural communities, many of our families and parishes in a sense have bottomed out, and they're really leveling off, and there's opportunity now for growth, opportunity to help foster greater participation, greater contributions in making sure that the mission in those rural areas is continued to be realized. And so essentially, what does this mean for us today? Family and parish consolidation. We're going to be looking at merging parishes together and parishes with significant unsustainable declines by optimizing all resources. So how do parishes merging together support and help one another while still responding to the sacramental needs of our Catholic population? Reducing inventory of our underutilized properties, recognizing that our footprint and infrastructure is too big for the population that we now have in Western New York. And so we have to be realistic about that. Which means we need to move from maintenance mode to mission. So we're making sure that our parishes are focused currently so much on survival and not on mission. We need to make sure that we move to mission mindedness instead of survival mindedness. That's the call of the church and the gospel. So when we look at engagement efforts, how are we engaging our parishes and family parishes and Catholics moving forward? There's many opportunities out there. I list those here. Alpha, Christ-like welcome. There are different ways that we can reach beyond our current parish communities. Bishop Mike has recently agreed that our diocese will participate in Alpha, which is an evangelization program. Alpha is partnering with the Diocese of Buffalo, giving us the resources and training that we need for all families of parishes to begin in September a very aggressive evangelizing effort to get the gospel message out there, to re-engage people in their faith, and to have those opportunities to talk about faith and why it's important to them. And we want our Catholic parishes to be a place where that can happen successfully. So this will improve and safeguard our requisite financial contributions. We also need to continue to support our priests. They minister so tirelessly throughout our diocese. Our current pastors, parochial vicars, and our retired clergy help us to make sure that the mission of Jesus continues, and we need to support them in accomplishing that. So the next that the pastors receive today in their meeting is there will be regional meetings between the June 3rd and 14th, where the Renewal team will meet with each specific geographical region on all of the data, in which we will share with them the recommendations of what should merge or close. All clergy, family leadership teams, their trustees, are invited to attend that meeting, and their deacons, so they can all be on the same page why we are making the recommendations that we're making. As those recommendations are made at that vicariate meeting, they will then be allowed to take those recommendations back to their larger parish structures to talk about them further, and to either acknowledge and accept the recommendations that were made, or to provide alternatives to what was recommended. And we'll want them to do that by July 15th. And they're going to let us know if they have an alternative plan in mind. The Renewal team will meet with them to make sure that they meet our standards and where things need to be for our diocese going forward between July 15th and August 23rd. Our plan is that we would have projected listing of finalized parishes and list of those parishes to merge and close by September 1st. Closures and mergers would not begin or take place until October of this year through Pentecost of 2025, which is June. We would like, if possible, for that to take place by Pentecost to symbolize that new beginning for these families coming together. And as part of this, Father Mark Noonan is one of our stellar pastors in our family parishes model, and we asked Father Mark to share with us what he's learned from this process and what he heard today.
Thanks, Father Brian. Chance to be with everybody today. My name is, Father Brian mentioned, is Father Mark Noonan. I'm the pastor of the Orleans Niagara East Catholic community. We call ourselves One Catholic. Our family of parishes comprises all of Orleans County and then part of eastern Niagara County. So we have church properties in Barker, St. Patrick's in Barker, St. Stephen's in Middleport, former Church of St. Joseph's in Lindenville stood, St. Mary's in Medina, Holy Family Parish in Albion, St. Mary's in Holly, and St. Mark's in Kendall. So there's 7 church properties, but it's 5 parishes. We also have 7 cemeteries. We have a total of 16 properties, about 35 buildings, more or less, and we have 3 priests serving Catholics and great people in our community to work with. And our family of parishes got started working together in March of 2023. Our community is rural. It encompasses about 500 square miles. So east to west, it's a little over an hour from the easternmost home to the westernmost home in the region that we serve. And shortly after we began our family of parishes and this new setup, we formed what we call our pillars. And every family of parishes has 6 pillars that focus on various areas of parish life. So there's the liturgy pillar, a spiritual life pillar, a forming disciples pillar, an outreach and inreach pillar, a stewardship pillar, and an administration pillar. And I personally have found that setup is way more effective, I think, at moving forward in a lot of different areas at the same time than we were able to prior in the way that our parishes were structured. It's also helped us to organize together and across our family of parishes to really bring people together and create a sense of unity and a lot of growth. That my family of parishes encompasses a very large geographical area. It hasn't had unity, and these groups working together these pillar groups has really created a lot of momentum for our effort. And we encountered a lot of challenges. So there's been a lot of unifying happened, a lot of things we unified our staff and operation. Our community become we have one parish, for our parishes, one website, one Facebook page. We've unified our faith formation for kids, a lot of our to evangelize, and we've been able to build a lot of unity. Of grow. Jesus said to go make disciples of all nations, and so our goal is to be the best we can to our community and try to grow. We are where in our community. A few things have contributed to that. One is that we weekly Spanish Mass for our Hispanic community. We have a significant Hispanic community in Orleans County and Eastern Niagara County, and sort of ways one residential community. So year round, we started a weekly Sunday Mass. And time of year, an influx. I'll be beginning a couple nights a week during the summer to go out to the migrant camps and serve them. I'm bilingual. I speak Spanish, so we're able to meet those needs. And that's created a lot of growth for our community. Our Mass attendance across our family of parishes the last 2 months is at the highest it's been since we started. We've seen increasing numbers of baptisms. Next year we're going to have more confirmations than we did this year. So a lot of ways we're just trying to grow. It's sacramental growth, it's spiritual growth, and I think hopefully a lot of personal growth too in the process. We're also on July 11th going to open the 8th St. Gianna Molla Pregnancy Outreach Center in our family of parishes. And that's really, we want to increase our outreach to the community in general. And this is going to be a great way for us to meet the needs of families in our community. We are going to have a satellite office in our parish and at our location in Medina. The center is going to be in Holly, New York. But our goal is to reach out to our community from Brockport to Lockport. And so there's been a lot of growth and new movement and new energy. And I can say our people, our leaders, and the people that are involved in our community have shown a lot of eagerness and excitement for the things that we're doing. And now with this process, we want to dig deep. We know that there's going to be sacrifices that have to be made, and we're prepared to do that and focus on growth. Our administration pillar, which, as I mentioned, is one of the key groups in this Families of Parishes process. From the very beginning, from when we formed our pillars last May, a year ago, we began discussing sort of the long-term picture, and we've been discussing the structure and layout for our family of parishes going forward in the years ahead and what's going to work best for us. And we've known since December that changes were coming. We read a letter at all the parishes throughout the diocese in December from the bishop indicating that we're going to be evaluating our properties and resources. And so today's announcement is another step in this process. And, I credit the diocese for telling us from the beginning that this would be a collaborative process. And I think what we're doing today and the information we priests found out today indicates that our parishes and parishioners, our leadership groups, we all have a role to play in the shaping of our future. I also would say that during these months, I think especially the last 6 months, there's a sense in my family of parishes, in One Catholic, that if we're leaner in terms of buildings and properties, we can carry out our mission more effectively. Sometimes having too many buildings and properties, some which are unused even, can soak up a lot of time and resources and energy, which are limited. We have a small staff in my family of parishes, and so it can limit our ability to focus on other things like our mission and growth. Where do we need to grow now? And so with less, we feel less material things, we may, being more lean in that respect, be able to focus on our mission more assiduously. And our needs in 2024 are different than they were in the past. And that is something the bishop mentioned and Brian has spoken about. There's less people, less practicing their faith. There's less priests, and people are more mobile as well. And so we've been talking about that in our family of parishes, in our leadership groups, and what that means. And so we understand now that more information about the direction, the recommendations of the diocese. And we already, like I said, in our family of parishes at least, have a general idea of what we think and how we see our future. And we're going to work collaboratively together within our family of parishes and with the nearby families of parishes and with the diocese to make things as great as we can for the people in our community, because that's what we want. We want things to be awesome for all the people in our community. And as pastors and parish leaders, and I would say this to parish leaders throughout the diocese, we're so grateful to you for you participating in personal. I'm just been that we can really transform things, and they can grow, and where there's a need for healing, there can be healing, and we can find our way forward in the best way. And we want to serve generously and with a great spirit of service, and to really be servants as the Lord calls us to. And so, I think principally too, I would say for our family of parishes in One Catholic and those various leadership groups that I spoke of, we've spoken a great deal about this, that we believe that focusing on our spiritual lives, individually and as a community, our relationship with the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit is what is most important for us. And we want to live out our personal lives close to Jesus. We want to pray more. We want to know him more and more. And we want more and more to be his disciples and to heed and listen closely to his voice and his calling in our life, especially the call to go and make disciples. And we believe, I think, most of all, that God will help us as we try to move forward. So happy to have a chance to share a few words about the Orleans Niagara East Catholic community, and I'm grateful to all of you.
Thank you, Father Mark.
At this time, we'd like to take questions. I know it's been a lot of information today. Once again, just want to remind you, we'd like to restrict, we'd ask that you restrict your questions specifically to today. So.
Throughout this process, how would you ensure that access to parishes remains equitable across all incomes and rural, urban areas?
So when we looked at looked at all of our dioceses, there were lots of factors that were considered. So geography was one of those key factors. And looking at our rural communities, transportation, so frankly, looking at how far do people drive to go shopping. That's typically the amount of mileage that we would expect people to be able to drive for participation in the sacraments. So we looked at factors that are out there already to help guide us in making these recommendations. When we looked at our urban setting, looking at busing, poverty rates, looking at those families that walk, are there opportunities available? So we tried to take factors into consideration. Now, it's not a problem, but we tried to make sure that access to the sacraments and spiritual well-being of people was considered in all of these recommendations. Yep.
I was wondering, in the last time, this was a long time ago, obviously, the journey of faith, but when vicariates were involved in decision-making, there was a lot of pressure put on certain people. Some did not like those decisions made. That caused a lot of backlash. How will you avoid this time around as you get those vicariates together?
So one of the things I would just want to reemphasize is that was a previous process that took place in the diocese a number of years ago. The renewal process is different than Journey of Faith and Grace. And as we look to the renewal, I think we're in a culture and a climate now that as we're, working more collaboratively, as far as have worked together, where they've already established a working relationship, that they're part of the shared decision-making process. So I think the structure that we have today is different in many respects than it was back when the process took place. So it's set us up, I believe, for more success this time.
Simone, WVFO News radio station. Are you guys going to be, or will this all be done sort of as a blanket effort to all parishes and worship sites, at once, or are there certain aspects that will be focused on in like the South Towns at one time and then Niagara County?
You can always make the best laid plans that you want, and then reality strikes. And so while today we're presenting a plan, we also know that we have to be flexible in that plan, because you're dealing with people's lives, you're dealing with parishes, you're dealing with the reality of day-to-day life with people. So therefore, while we have a goal, everything's collaborative. We have a goal in mind that, of course, announcement of what those finalized merger parishes will be in September, with the goal that next Pentecost, next June, that would be completed. If we need to adapt and adjust because of special circumstances and situations, we have the ability to do that. But we also need to have a goal that we're trying to achieve together.
Will any schools be affected in this merger?
So as we're looking to the schools, and the bishop wants to talk about the school process.
Yeah, the schools obviously are precious to us. I have committed in my ministry that Catholic education is important in our mission, into the mission of the church. As we move forward, and we are in the midst of our pastoral planning with our schools, how do they fit within these local families of parishes? That's being looked at. We have a committee and a task force looking at that, also preparing a pastoral plan there. But we also need to look at how we're doing that in a different way. Our classic parishes or our classic schools where they were attached to one parish are not working any longer. We need to have more support, whether it's financially, whether it's personnel-wise, as well as enrollment. And I think as we look at forming these families, strengthening of parishes, how do the schools fit into the structure there, as well as how are we delivering education to our people all the way from pre-K to college. I mean, outside of Philadelphia, we have more colleges or institutions of higher learning than anywhere in the country. So we have a lot of resources in these regards. But that is an important part of our planning. We're trying to bring that into sync with what we're doing in terms of our work with their bill, obviously. But what we're committed to is any parent that wants their child to have a Catholic education in the diocese will be able to do that. And we have to the resources down in it's a variety and how so it's certainly something we have better minds than mine in terms of education working on right now with us, and hopefully we will sink that into our planning for our renewal for our parish families.
So schools may close, as in would they? Because I know you had just said that anyone who wants to get that Catholic education will still be able to do so. Does that mean within the merger, a student, if we know this by September 1st, a student who's just starting the school year, would they be left without a school, or would they be taken to a different school that would provide those resources? Is that what you mean?
No, at the moment we're moving. We have really two types of school. We have schools that are maintaining themselves right now, but we also have schools, quite a number of our schools that are in crisis, helping to with schools that may we might be presented with a challenge. Usually it's either financially or no children in the seats. So we need to do that. But what we're looking at, though, within these families is how do we deliver education in these schools in a different way. Now that's not going to be done overnight. Again, we're not quite there yet where we're going to be, but we can assure that come September, again, our parents can encourage them certainly to enroll their children in our schools.
Brad from Channel 2. You guys mentioned about baptism being 52% on decline. How alarming is that for the parishes? And think about new families of the next generation in the baptism of the sacraments. Guys, how alarming is that? And then how can that maybe change and reach out to the youth?
I've said right from the beginning, when we look at the vitality and the life of our parishes, that to me, what's more important than the financial piece are how our sacraments are being celebrated. That's why we're there. And when we see that there's only one baptism a month, I was also alarmed at the fact that we didn't have what was the how many parishes? What was it? 66 parishes didn't have anyone who came in to the into the church during the Easter season through the RCIA. That to me says we're not doing we're in maintenance mode. We need to be evangelizing, and we need to be out there again sharing our faith. That's what our mission is about. So that to me is very alarming. It's part of what keeps me and I know my brother priests up at night. We celebrate a lot of funerals, and I mean those are wonderful things, but we need to replace them. We need to replace them with wonderful people. And we need to, this, I think, a challenge to us when it comes to our young people, our youth. But we're faced, I think, with the same challenges that our society are when it comes to, again, encouraging our youth to be more engaged in their faith, in their church, and in our.
So my understanding is the thought is a third of current parishes somehow merged, which order of 54 parishes.
38%, I think.
Yeah, 38%.
Oh, it's 38.
So 34% of parishes, 38% of worship sites would be merged or
My next
closed.
question was the actual buildings, the sites themselves.
Right.
I don't have a sense of what that 38% of those.
So that's through recommendations. After looking at the data, that's where we're at right now. That's why that consultation phase is so important, because it gives parish families an opportunity to analyze that. Is this realistic? Is it practical? Does it meet the needs of where we're going and the family moving forward? So to say that that's an official number is difficult at this time because we haven't had the input back yet. And we want to make sure that parishes and families have that opportunity to engage back and forth with us, recognizing, we have some things we have to think about as we're going forward in the diocese that, make sure we meet these benchmarks. But at the same time, we have to listen to make sure that, we're hearing where parish families are at as well. So, we have to do this together.
As a follow-up to that, the families have been now together for over a year, right? All the families. And, they were under instructions to examine your properties, sort of figure out, well, do you need this or do you need that? Can you discuss the extent to which they did that and whether they were able to come to terms on their own and figure out, well, we can close this worship site, but that it's just too difficult to do that within a family, and you have to step in.
So a couple of things. Number one is that not all of our families have been functioning for a full year. So roughly 2/3 have been functioning for a year, and they're moving on a year and a half. The rest of them were inaugurated on July 1st of last year. So they're just coming up on their 1 year. So when you have priestly leadership and teams that are now coming together, they're really new in this whole process and trying to respect the fact that properties, they did a good job at telling us, percentage of use and is this needed in their family going forward. But they also are looking for some guidance from the diocesan level, from the Renewal, to help guide them in, is this essential for the mission of what's expected in that family going forward into the future? So I consider it a both-and approach. They looked at their properties, we're giving them some guidance from above, and now we're going to mutually come upon a decision together. So that process was needed.
Andy.
Is more going to be expected of these large parishes now in terms of contributing funds to help in the settlement process?
We're working on that right now, but obviously all of our parishes, all of our entities, we are going to need to participate in order for us to emerge from Chapter 11. And that may need to be how that's done. I haven't worked that out.
We heard that parishes to give up to 80% of their savings for the settlement. Is that true?
Order, Andy, through the courts. We're very restricted about what we can talk about with the Chapter 11 proceedings. So.
We can't say the Chapter 11 organization is essentially, this is part of that, the Chapter 11 reorganization with the Renewal. We have to reorganize for the future and to meet, the future with hope. And so that's why the reorganization is helping us and forcing us to take a hard look at ourselves and how are we going to emerge.
for those locations that will be closing, is there any plan for how those spaces, like maybe sell those spaces or some other way in which those could be utilized after they're closed?
So there's a Buildings and Properties Department for the Diocese in collaboration with the leadership at the Chancery that we're going to have to talk about and look at that process, making sure, that, of course, that there's best use of spaces and making sure that they meet what we would expect from a former sacred space and all that kind of stuff. So there's all of those guidelines in place that will guide families in making these decisions and actually executing the sale of these properties as we go forward.
Any other questions we can answer at this point? We're good? Okay. Thank you very much for attending today.